Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'm discussing the 5th movie to be released in the Scream franchise, the 2022 movie, the simply titled Scream, this time around as directed by Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, who take up the mantle, the directorial mantle that is, following Wes Craven's very sad passing in 2015, after he had directed all of the 4 previous movies in the series. Given that this film follows the 4th some 11 years later, and indeed the first some 26 years later, I was somewhat concerned that there wasn't going to be much left of this story to tell. Surely by now, everything that could have been done with the series has kind of been done, right? The original Scream redefined the horror genre and examined the rules and tropes of many of the classic horror movies and franchises. Scream 2 took it one step further and took a magnifying glass to the Hollywood sequel. Scream 3, trilogies of course, and indeed Scream 4, remakes. So, where to go to number 5? Reboot perhaps? And so indeed, following a trend to have hit the spate of movie franchises in recent years, the Scream franchise gets its very own reboot of sorts. Or requel, as the term is coined in the movie. I've not heard of that one before. Being both a remake and a sequel at the same time. And so in true Scream fashion, this is then where the movie takes aim. Set some 25 years following the events of the first movie, this Scream sees the main focus shift to a new generation, with Sam Carpenter and her sister Tara, as played by Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, respectively, along with their group of friends, being their new kind of cohort, if you like, now being terrorised by another psychopathic killer hiding behind the now iconic and synonymous Ghostface costume. As the relentless attacks home ever closer, it becomes clear that there is more kind of going on that meets the eye, and Sam must face who she is and her past in order not only to kind of repair her relationship with her sister, but also kind of save them from becoming the next round of victims on the cutting room floor. With some help from some more than familiar faces, Sam starts to piece the puzzle together. But this is easier said than done when everybody is once again a potential suspect. Now, for me, without a doubt, this was a fantastic return to form for the franchise, with a delectably intriguing story, a great cast, and an ensemble of characters, and just the right amount of nostalgia, paving a way to a perfectly formed kind of dedication to the series creator Wes Craven. Very much holding true to the legacy of the series, whilst at the same time opening a door to a potential reboot of the series with a whole new focus going forwards. It does a brilliant job at bringing the suspense back to the series and sets things up for what is about to follow a little differently than its predecessors, which provides more kind of a heartfelt and kind of meaningful kind of delivery at the beginning. Kind of a very good emotional setup as the basis for the film's overall plot. Compared to the last few sequels in the series, we do spend a lot more time building up the new cast of characters, and this is done in such a way that, if I'm honest, you're that totally absorbed in their journey that it really doesn't actually matter, nor would I have actually have cared if any of the previous cast never actually made their return. And I really do think that speaks volumes for how creatively this movie has actually been set up. Now, don't get me wrong, it was great to see Sidney, Dewey and Gale, played by Neve Campbell, David Arquette and Courteney Cox respectively, back in action once again. You know, I had a couple of tears in my eyes at certain points. It actually got that sentimental and emotional. But I wasn't pining for them to return when I was sat there. I wasn't sat waiting until those moments they actually appeared. The new cast, especially Barrera, if I'm saying that name right, held the film up exceedingly well on their own merits, proving that there was still blood to be drawn from this franchise, even after all of the years and various sequels that had come to pass. I think that the balance, it was the right balance that was kind of struck between the amount of involvement of the existing cast. It was just right. This was never their story. It was never. This had been told, and there, there was some finality in that respect. It felt like that. Yet their presence still felt like a natural progression for the story as it unfolded, never kind of feeling engineered or kind of contrived in any way. We do see a similar setup to the original story, but from a slightly different perspective. A family torn apart by secrets they thought had kind of been buried in the past. This film actually feels like it has a heart. It has more than an emotional kind of connection, and as a result, some of the kills are especially poignant. It certainly had me squirming in my seat more than once, and, you know, not only that, simply because of the gore. I can handle that most of the time, to be quite fair, but what I mean was just that the sheer impact of some of the kills we experienced because of the way that we've kind of got to know these characters and get so involved in them this time around. This movie takes things a bit more seriously than its predecessors. The comedy was much more understated compared to the other outings, but it played more on Ghostface this time around, I think, who, to be fair, had some of the best lines of the series. Definitely some creative kills as well. This Ghostface certainly seemed to be savouring each kill, and all in all, each had much more of a kind of a theatrical kind of feel. It felt like a show. But poor old Ghostface, of course, they are needing to really kind of step up their game in these films now and kind of put some real effort in. These kids aren't going down without putting up a fight. And indeed, they certainly get a good run for their money, you know. It definitely ramps things up in that respect, making it a lot more interesting and certainly packs more than a punch for the audience. It's a very suspicious movie. They're all suspicious movies. They're all running through with paranoia. But this one, tensions are running high amongst everybody involved. And it tackles our expectations for the series head on with, you know, more evolved characters and a much more involved story. It has a very strong sense of paranoia, kind of mixing it up against the trappings and pitfalls of continuing such a series for as long as they kind of have done with this one. And has great fun in doing so, you know. The delivery, is excellent. A bit more of a kind of a brooding story than previous entries, and kind of the setup is totally on point this time around, I think, for what they were going for. The ending, however, I'm not going to give it away. Don't worry about that. I'm not going to give it away. But what I'm going to say, so exciting as it kind of turns out to be, I think overall the ending, the action, the thrill, the suspense, yes. I can't help, however, feeling a little deflated given the killer's rationale. Unfortunately, that did seem a little bit stale. After everything we'd gone through, it was a little contrived, and against the overall story that was presented, not very inventive at all. I do kind of find that when the big reveal happens, without the Ghostface costume, most of the killers in the franchise, they lose their power. But for a few, of course, there's a couple that spring to mind. And this, I would say, is probably the biggest setback this movie has. It's probably the worst of the series, in fact. Ghostface was perfect to a fault. The killer just couldn't live up to this, and it was more than felt, at least for me. I also found that at certain points, it kind of seemed to throw insults at the genre, rather than kind of simply parodying it and paying it lip service in more subtle ways. It doesn't feel quite as loving against the genre as the others had done. It's a small thing, but it is quite sharp in that respect, I found. And perhaps a little bit too pretentious, perhaps. Especially given that at times it does resort more than once to kind of feeding us a bunch of cheap scares itself, you know? It ain't immune. It ran a serious risk of coming up against its own jabs and jibes as it goes. It perhaps came very close to kind of crossing a line in that respect, I thought. But overall, whilst I would say that it is not quite on the same level as the original two movies, this certainly comes close in direction, style, presentation and attitude. It really does. Being a fantastic homage to the series overall, to Wes Craven's work, and again, in the main, the horror genre in general, and where it kind of come from and where it's gone to in the last decade or so. They're kind of like time capsules out of the Scream movies in their own accord. This is kind of a punchy, you know, and well-constructed entry into the Scream franchise, absolutely. Bringing us a fantastic new cast, an intriguing story, and probably some of the best Ghostface moments to date. Certainly the ones most to savour, you know? Definitely bringing the slasher movie back into focus, at least for me. The returning cast are still excellent and perfectly portioned, I think. But this time around, it does sincerely feel like the torch has been passed, you know, to a new generation. And it really does feel like it's in good hands. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst Movie Talk, and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.